Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this special edition of our regular monthly enablement and update sessions. This is a special edition because today we're going to talk, especially in the second half of it, we are going to talk about MTR and cloud optics offerings for the MSPs. And for these purposes, we have a special guest. Our guest speaker today is Steve Weber, who is a global solutions engineer for MSP. And Steve will be presenting for us today. Apart from that, we have almost the whole EMEA MSP team for you. So today we have Gael Torres, we have Daniel Meulenberg, we have Daniel Valinda, Dima Dabur, and myself, of course. My name is Anna Becker. I am a marketing manager at Sophos, dedicated for MSP. And together with our whole big MSP team, we welcome you to this session. For the very beginning, I would like to give you a couple of organizational pieces of information. You are all on a listen-only mode just to avoid any background noise. But if you have any questions, please use the chat window and our whole MSP team will be answering and picking up your questions from the chat while Steve is presenting. And then we'll have a look at the frequently asked questions at the end of each half of our monthly sessions, meaning that the most relevant ones we will be answering live also for everybody. We are always recording all our sessions, and you will all receive the recording and the slides with the follow-up email afterwards, most probably tomorrow. It will be sent to all of you automatically. With this, I wish us all a nice and informative webinar, and now I'm handing over to Steve, please.
Thanks, Anna. All right, welcome everyone. Okay, we're going to get into this. Basically, I've provided built a deck for everyone. We're going to talk about threat targets, and then at the end of that, we're going to talk about how do we protect ourselves against those threat targets in our environments. So to begin this, I want to talk about the threat landscape just a little bit here. This is still a very relevant slide. I know you probably have seen this if you've seen any Sophos webinars talking about the threat landscape, but this should still give us all pause for concern. 450,000 pieces of new malware each and every day, 75% of which is only seen once in an organization, meaning the bad guys are changing this code up and building it on the fly. So that means that your traditional AV is not going to cut it when it comes to protecting against these sorts of attacks. 53% of organizations have been hit by ransomware, at least the ones that have actually come forward and admitted it. And what we're seeing is a rise. So if we look at the pie chart here, you'll see a rise in the active adversary attacks here. And we're going to discuss that in a little more depth here as to why we're seeing a bit of a rise in this sort of an attack and what the ultimate goal of these types of attacks are. Also, about 1/3 of all the people that get hit with ransomware out there end up having to pay that ransomware. Not because it was just easier to get it back, but because they didn't have the proper backups in place, you know, offsite and offline, ensuring that they did not get encrypted. So the reason why ransomware is still, and the cybersecurity is still quite a big topic, is last year alone, the online crime in the, again, just the one last year was 2.7 billion, and that's US dollars. That's quite hefty, and this is just continuing to rise. If you kind of take a look at this over financial losses over the couple of years here, you can see it's just been steadily on a rise, with it actually shooting up from 2017 till current to quite a high number. The reason for this increasing attacks is going to be the fact that we're getting increasingly mobile. Everyone on this call probably has a laptop, a desktop, smartphones that we do everything on. We're connected to virtual servers and some sort of a cloud storage to get our work done, whether that's Amazon, Microsoft Office 365. So your attack surface has just gotten exponentially larger. And then these attacks, these bad guys, they're getting more and more sophisticated. So all the same tools that we're using today to help prevent and protect these environments. Again, the bad guys have access to these same tools as well. So they're utilizing these tools, the machine learning algorithms, to get in and attack these environments. Another thing that's being done, and this is something that I definitely recommend some of you do today. So these tools right here are commonly used tools by bad guys. Shodan is an automated tool. This is a service you can actually sign up for. It'll actually go out and do a scan of the dark web and report back any information on a particular domain, IP address, anything else inside of the environment. So you as an MSP can definitely sign up for this service and utilize the same tool that the bad guy is using to determine what information has been leaked out there. Good idea to know what for your customers has been leaked out there. That way you can go ahead and rein those targets in. For discovery on the networks, once an active adversary gets into your network, they're again using the same tools, Nmap, sysinternals. These are tools that as an admin we use every single day. You know, psexec, pskill, network scanning. And again, the same thing we use as a global offensive for Kali and Cobalt Strike. They're also utilizing those tools again to attack your particular environments and automate a lot of their procedures. So let's talk about your end user. So this is primarily where we see the attack entry. This is where the bad guys are going to be targeting. So we know that we can have the greatest firewalls, endpoint security, phishing attack simulators out there, and no matter what we do, we still have to be very proactive. We still have the human error. We are always going to have a Dave at our company who will go through and click on anything and find ways around all of the security that we are providing. So again, we still need to be very vigilant. We still need to have all these components in place, but that human error will always exist. Many ways to get to your end users. The bad guys know this. They know they can get in through, a compromised web server. They have exploits and bugs on particular websites that they can go and target. Maybe it's just a plain and simple infected file. What we're going to talk about is more specifically phishing. And what this will again lead to is either an active adversary getting onto your network, and when they're on that network, they don't typically go right for the throat. Typically, they're on that network for upwards of 2 to 3 months before actually deploying any sort of a ransomware, malware, or even data mining on there with the crypto mining. So again, there's a very long dwell time, and that 2 to 3 months is actually pretty low. It can be upwards of 2 years for the dwell time of an active attacker on a network. So we need to make sure that we are looking at all those indicators of compromise. So phishing, again, is going to be one of the #1 topics we're going to talk about here. This is a article here on our Naked Security blog from Sophos. This is Florida City. This is in my neck of the woods here. This is actually somebody got compromised through a phishing attack. It was Osley Construction. This is a real firm. I was working on a project for the Ocala International Airport, and essentially someone had gotten into their systems through a phishing attack and was able to then create another phishing attack sent out to the Ocala International Airport requesting money. And these fraudsters were able to get in there and request that check for $742,000 US and have that check actually paid inside of the environment. The Ocala International Airport, because it was coming from a contractor they were doing business with, didn't even look twice at it. So why does this keep working in the environment? Again, remember that whole thing we had with Dave. We've always got, no matter how much training we do on there, we've got our good employees. And again, you guys probably all know that one employee at every single one of your customers that will click on absolutely everything. So we can go through there. Let's say 2 out of the 3 times they're going to say, nope, this is scam. We're not going to fall for it. And then we get the last guys like, yep, I'll click on this and let's go. And the reason for this is these attacks are just getting very complex. The bad guys are no longer going through and having grammatical errors across the entire screen. It's actually looking very official. On this one here, other than the fact that you should have caught right at the very top here that this is not from PayPal, it's from another website somewhere else. This is actually a legitimate attack that came through the system that we were able to see. coming to a particular user, and you can actually see that this looks actually pretty legit. And if someone was actually to go and click on this, you would actually be presented with the PayPal screen to go and sign in. Now, I've got two screens up here, and the reason for that is one is actually the real screen and one is not. And I bring this up just to show you how easily this is, how close these are on what they look like. And to see which one is actually real, if you look to the right side, that's your actual real login page there. So if you got fooled by this and you clicked on the left-hand side and were logged in here, you would get this error on there that said, hey, we are temporarily unable to load your account. Please confirm now. And what the bad guy's doing is having you go ahead and confirm your identity, something that PayPal may do. Put in your first name, last name, all your information, phone number, hit continue, and then not only do we need to confirm who you are, but let's confirm your credit card number and your social security number as well, allowing them to go in and capture all of that information. So that's coming through email. And what we're seeing as well is you not only need to protect your organizations against email, and we not only need to have our end users brought up to speed on being very vigilant, looking at these types of attacks. If you have something coming in from PayPal, don't click on the email, open up a browser, go to paypal.com, log in directly. But now we're seeing this as a little bit of an evolve. So we're now, because remember that mobile attack surface that is out there, we've got a huge attack surface, we've got all these different apps, all these different ways of communication. And a recent attack that we had, and was actually against Sophos, was using WhatsApp. So this is a commonly used tool. Basically, most attacks are conducted via email, but this one again utilized WhatsApp as far as the messaging. The attacker picked this tool hoping that the victim would just be caught off guard a little bit. We're going to catch them where they weren't quite paying attention to it because it didn't come from email. And this attack, if you look at the right-hand side here, the attacker went and grabbed our CEO's screenshot from his social media, his LinkedIn, Facebook, put his name and everything else in here, and then sent out a campaign against a couple of Sophos employees. Basically, utilizing some of the news that is out there for Sophos today, the guise of a confidential acquisition and a legal firm that needed to be contacted. The goal was to have them transfer money so that they can have this go through the system, and basically we can pay to proceed throughout this agreement and this acquisition of a new company. And because this was coming from our CEO, they were reinforced on there of, hey, hey, I'm the CEO, this is Chris Hagerman, I'm under an NDA, please do not share this with anyone else. And then they also prompted them to contact our legal firm. And actually the legal firm that they found, this researcher or this attacker did their research on there. This legal firm is actually the legal firm that we utilize. Of course, that contact information is not going to be the correct number to call that actual legal firm. So again, bad guy did a lot of research and made sure they knew exactly what was going on. There's also some reinforcement in here of, hey, can I count on you? Can I count on you to get this done quickly and confidentiality? So when we're talking about phishing, these are just a couple of points and a couple of key takeaways that you should bring into your customers. And these are great points that our Sophos Labs team put together to really spread the word. So when we're talking about phishing, and it doesn't matter where it comes from, it doesn't matter if it comes from an email, it doesn't matter if it comes from a phone call and text message, WhatsApp message. If there's some urgency behind this, if you're being told, hey, I need to get this done right now, you need to get this done under confidential concerns under there, and don't talk to anyone else, just do it really quick, that is a huge red flag. You need to go ahead and take a step back and ensure that we check with someone else, call the person directly, call whoever else is working with this as well, and ensure that this is actually legit. Again, confidentiality, if they're asking you to be, keep this quiet and not share this with anyone, again, another red flag. Why don't they want anyone else to know about this? and then pressure. So the attacker in this one did pressure our employee on there, asking him, hey, can I count on you? Can I ensure that you're going to get this done quickly? So because this was coming from a CEO, and that pressure would already be on there, because why is the CEO calling me? That really just adds to it. Let me get this done quickly. Let's not go and check with anyone. So again, just take a step back, make sure this is not a scam, and then continue. Thankfully, in our environment, this was caught. It was raised up through the organization, but as you can see from the messages on the prior screen, there was some dialogue before this was actually caught, before the end user actually stepped back and said, all right, let me verify what's going on before this happens. So switching gears a little bit, we're going to talk about ransomware, and this is just a really high level overview of ransomware. I'm sure you all have seen these screens. Ransomware is definitely not going anywhere. It is big business. So the end goal of most of these attacks, and not all of them, but most, because it's a very easy deliverable, and the more we can get out there as a bad guy, the better chances are of them getting actually paid and catching somebody who is caught off guard. They don't have their backups in place. They don't have their protections in place. And this actually, I actually got a call last night on this. So I had a company here local to me that did not take any of the advice that we gave them. They did not go with the Sophos product. They did not ensure that their backups are offline and stored securely. They actually got hit with the Ryuk virus, ransomware, and they actually went through as an active adversary attack, was in their environment for X amount of time, and were able to go through and encrypt the entire company, all of their backups. Basically, that team, instead of watching the Super Bowl last night, was running around crazy trying to figure out how to get this environment back up and running before Monday morning without any backups. So again, at that point, because they were caught off guard, they probably, and I haven't heard the actual result on there, but probably ended up having to pay these ransomwares. So quick run through of the different ransomwares that are out there. You guys have probably seen these. Your computer has been locked. Go in and let's pay the particular ransomware on there. This one right here, just asking us, hey, we're going to pay and transfer 1.4 Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, definitely a common currency for the bad guy because it is untraceable, but 1.4 Bitcoins. If we look at the current price, and this is the current price as of December, so we'd have to look it up again today. At December, it was actually $9,000 for 1 Bitcoin, meaning that this particular ransom right here was actually a $12,000 ransom just to unlock your files inside of here. So just to give you an idea, when we're talking, and it really doesn't sound like a lot when we say, hey, it's just 1 Bitcoin, but, and again, that's US dollars, so that translates very high into what the actual ransomwares are being, and these are very expensive. And a lot of companies, now this one was probably not a very large company, but this could absolutely cripple an organization. And this one I threw in there fun because I actually found this one. This was just an interesting ransomware that somebody had put together. If we have any gamers in the audience, basically what they did, and I'll copy that text out there, they encrypted all of your files and basically told you to go play a game for an hour, and then they'd unlock your files, or they gave you the restore key right at the bottom. So this was just somebody out there having some fun. But again, this is also a ransomware component out there, not wanting any money. But again, the bad guys are out there doing anything under the sun to encrypt your data, whether it's for fun and they're just playing around, or if it's a legit attack and they are wanting money for that. So the cyber criminals, if we see, when we take a look through here, damages related, again, going back to that, that first set of slides there, damages are estimated to get upwards of $6 trillion by 2021, which means that we should be increasing our security spend as a priority for the rest of 2020. The bad guys are going to be increasingly coming up with new methods of attack. They're always either digging up some old ransomware that can be brought back in and reworked, or again, building something completely new and coming up with a new attack vector, such as the cyber security with the WhatsApp. So definitely make sure that you guys are on your guard. Make sure you have your particular components in place. Make sure you have your protections. Make sure you have your backups in place. So we're talking about a lot more than what we do here at Sophos as well. And we're actually going to cover a bit more of that as well here as we continue on. So I don't know how many of you have heard of a supply chain attack, and this is actually going to be pretty relevant, and we're going to talk about this as it relates to MSP here in a moment as well. But a supply chain attack, I'm not talking about as in terms of a brand new virus or malware that is out there. A supply chain attack is an attack that instead of coming and going through the main vendor, let's say the target is this big corporation, instead of going through that big corporation, we're actually going to go ahead and target their vendors. So if we take a look at this from an actual chart, we can see that we have our large enterprises here in the middle, and then we have all those vendors that actually feed that particular company. Now, when we're talking vendors, this could be anything from your supplier who's bringing in your particular goods, your alarm system company, your AC control company, any company you do business with to keep your business running. You probably have some sort of a tie with that particular company, whether it's over email or direct into your systems. If the bad guy can go in and instead of compromising you, but compromise one of your vendors, breaking in, that now gets them to where they can communicate and get into your network, and allowing them to come in, compromise the enterprise and get to the customer information, deploy ransomware, exfiltrate data, whatever the goal here is of this particular attack. But again, coming in through not necessarily direct into the enterprise, but we also need to take a look at all those relationships we have as a business as well as points of interest in an attack. Now, where this comes in as the MSP is, remember, as the MSP, you're going to be the vendor for a lot of your customers. And right now, MSPs are definitely under attack. You guys are holding the keys to the kingdom with your RMM tools, so you're going to want to ensure that we're actually going through and protecting and locking down those systems. For the supply chain attack here, everybody probably, hopefully, has heard of Target. It's a big shopping store. They were actually a target of a supply chain attack. The attackers got in through their HVAC system, which is the AC and cooling system. Were able to get in through an IoT device there and break into the rest of the Target systems. This data breach cost Target 18.5 million US dollars. So the reason for this kind of attack and why we're not going towards the enterprise to deal with that particular type of an entry point is if we take a look at this chart, and this is from the Department of Homeland Security. If we take a look at a company with an SMB 100 to 500 employees, there's not usually a lot of people dedicated, if any, dedicated to cybersecurity. And as we go up that chart, you can see even if we get into 1,000 employees, there's maybe one dedicated. Now, I'm not talking IT people. So I'm not talking there's like 10, 20 different IT people. I'm talking dedicated to cybersecurity. Someone's job is only to take a look and analyze potential threats in the environment. That person is typically fairly expensive, and for a smaller business, not somebody that you're going to have on staff. Obviously, when we get into those enterprises, they know that they are targets and they've got more people dedicated to that type of an attack and to that type of security. All right, so talking about these active adversaries. Now, again, these are people that are going to work on getting into your environment and necessarily not get in there and make noise right away. They want to go undetected inside of your environment, sneak around, poke around, find the data that they need, find the interesting bits, and then when the time is right, deploy their trap, deploy the ransomware, deploy their crypto mining operation, whatever their component that they're wanting to deal with at that particular time. So what we're gonna do is walk through a typical scenario, and I've actually tailored this one to MSP. So we have an attacker here who's wanting to get into a network, and what they're going to need to do is deliver some sort of an infected payload. This could be over email, this could be a website that's compromised, any one of those numbers of things that we talked about earlier to get that payload into an environment. The goal here is to get in and have one user or many users in that environment open up that payload so we can get in and compromise that machine. Once that machine is compromised, that attacker now owns that machine. They live on that machine. Now, here's where this starts to become a little bit different than malware. So malware has a very specific set of instructions. As we're going through and they deploy their malware, it's all automated in the system. It's looking for very specific ports. It's looking for very specific things and programs and applications that it can exploit. And anywhere during that attack, if we were to interrupt it, that malware breaks. That's where we start talking that kill chain. If we can break any one of those components in that kill chain, it breaks the malware. Where it comes to an active adversary, if they get stopped, if they run into a wall, because this is an active person coming in and compromising the system, they can try again. They can go a different path. So if we take a look at this here, we can go and start running PowerShell. We can deploy executables, scripts, other such options on there. And I don't have to take one path. The active adversary can come in here and take multiple paths in order to get into that particular environment. They can try to compromise network shares and get additional people to open files that way, create multiple persistent tasks in the environment to ensure that they don't lose connectivity. Again, going and doing a port scan, which again, may be detected in the environment, maybe not. Let's try another way. Again, once they can get something executed on additional machines, they're now starting to spread across and discover the rest of the network here. And ultimately, the goal here is we want to have some sort of an exploit or a PE injection on there, portable executable. There's some credential theft happens inside here, so we can elevate our privileges and continue to move across this network. And eventually, we find something that looks interesting as the bad guy. They find your RMM server, where we're going in to manage all of the customers. Once they get access to this, it's just a matter of time before they're able to get in and determine what the credentials are or who has those credentials and who they need to go in and find. And they've now got that RMM server owned at that point. Eventually, they'll get into your RMM application. And as we all know, that is not going to be good. This is where we're seeing a lot of this happening in the environment. Now, this is one path. And this is one path with multiple options of the attacker getting in. And we see this other path all too often as well. All of your RMM tools typically have remote access. Now, if that remote access is not secured very well, or it has, let's say somebody still has RDP open, any of the other number of things, they can still come in and use RDP brute force. They can brute force into the RMM login. And again, right from there, they're into that. So again, multiple routes into the same objective. Now, the goal here is to go ahead and utilize the scripting that is inside of the RMM tool and to compromise all of your customers' machines. And that is the ultimately bad scenario for everybody here. And now we have, here's the instructions on how to pay this ransomware. And typically what they will do inside here to make sure that the customer knows who to call, they will actually tell you who the MSP is and call this MSP to recover your information, basically putting the onus back on the MSP to contact you, letting that MSP know that they just got owned as well. So continuing this on, talking about MSPs, again, the reason why you guys are becoming targets in here is you have the golden keys. You have the keys to the kingdom on here. These RMM tools, your IT glue, all the other programs that you are utilizing to run your business, collecting the data on your customers, keys, passwords, remote access scripts, remote control without any sort of permissions on there. These are all methods that are very highly sought after by the bad guy. Why attack each individual company if we can attack, again, that MSP who is the vendor and then come down into the rest of those companies? So making sure that you as an MSP are subjecting yourself to third-party security tests, holding yourself accountable to the same sort of security that you would provide for your customers is very much needed inside of the environment. And just pulling a couple of headlines here so you guys can run through and see these. I won't dwell on these. but this is more and more. If you can just do a quick Google search for MSPs and ransomware or MSP attacks or compromise, you'll pull any one of these particular headlines up inside of here. MSPs going through and reporting these to, and these are only the ones that get reported in the environment. This one here, I was actually just in Texas, and this was an MSP that was dealing with government facilities there, and they had 22 local governments actually encrypted and hit by this particular ransomware that came through this MSP. Now, keep in mind, if this happens to you as an MSP and 22 of your customers get hit in the environment, how long are you going to be in business as an MSP? So this is very detrimental to your success as an MSP. The confidence from that customer is going to be severely degraded if they know that, hey, that attack came in not from any procedures, not from our employees, but from the people that were supposed to be protecting us. So again, ensuring that you as the MSP have good hygiene, making sure your networks are secure, put all the best practices in place for your particular environment. Again, securing your network and your clients. So this means two-factor authentication, even if it is, your techs are telling you that, we can't do it, it's taking too much time. We don't want to make sure that we make it easy for the bad guys. If it's easy for us, it's also easy for the bad guy to get in as well. So having more than one way, more barriers to get in so you can actually go through and restore your networks, protect your networks to ensure that this doesn't happen in the first place. So how do we protect against this? So let's take a look at this attack here that we just went through. And how would we start to protect against this type of attack as an MSP? So first and foremost, as we talked about in there, 2FA. 2FA everywhere, anywhere and everywhere that 2FA is available, whether it's logging onto your machine, whether it's logging onto web access, logging onto your RMM application. This is just a very simple, easy way to have an extra layer of security. Everybody should be doing this today. Adding on, and then we're going to talk a little bit, this is more geared towards the Sophos side. Adding on to this, we want to make sure we have a good firewall. So in this case, the XG firewall, locking down that information. If your RMM tool is on premise, making sure it's behind that XG firewall, making sure we're using the web server protection on there. If we have payloads coming into the environment, whether it's through web or email, ensuring again the XG firewall can see that data. We are using all the SSL inspection on there, the Sandstorm capabilities to protect those environments. Getting into the network here on towards the right, we can actually see that network shares. So having that network segmented, the days of flat networks should be way out of there. Everything should be segmented. We have this very easily set up on the XG firewall. If you don't want to deal with VLANs, you can put them into different zones with different switches connected. But VLANs are definitely the most common way to segment out networks. Don't keep your servers, your end users, your accounting staff, everyone on a single network. Segment that network out, have it go through different methods of security to get there again, namely here the XG firewall. If we see port scans, if we see these exploits coming through, the XG firewall will be able to pick up on that information as well and report that back to the endpoint and report that to you as the admin. Getting in with the Intercept X Advanced and the EDR component. So again, taking a look at that infected payload, making sure that PowerShell is only being run by users that it's supposed to, and if it is run, that we have visibility on what PowerShell components are run. PowerShell, network shares, if they're dropping executables or scripts in the environment or any exploitation of that, we have all that information protected inside of the environment. And then layering on with our latest offering, which you can see really comes in and starts to protect the environment even more. We add additional layers of security on there with the Sophos MTR, which is our managed threat response. This gives full visibility into your system, what's going on those systems between the endpoints and the XG firewall, bringing all that data into a threat analyst. These are actual people going in and taking a look at your environment, constantly going and doing threat hunts to ensure that there's security inside of your environment and that we do not have that active adversary. There's no indicators of compromise inside of your environment. Again, that's the big thing here. The attacker here, this attack right here could have happened over the course of, let's say, 6 months. You know, he worked his way through, he found the machines that he needed, he finally landed on that RMM server. During that entire 6 months, he's definitely been poking around. There's definitely been some indicators of compromise. So we want to make sure that there's someone, a security team, paying attention and looking for those indicators of compromise and indicators of attack inside of your environment. All right, so still talking about security here, and this is a bit of an eye chart, but I'll leave it up here for a few seconds while we talk about it. When we start talking about the different layers, so we have our information and assets here down in the green at the bottom. And as we layer on top, these are the different methods in which we can do at the data layer. So at the data layer, we can start encrypting all of the data. At the application layer, making sure we have our web application firewall, database security, application testing, make sure we have our endpoints on there, EDR, asset management, make sure things are patched in the environment. Again, getting up to the network layer and then the information layer. You can see there's multiple layers, and this is absolutely not everything. This is just a really quick overview of the different components that are inside of here. Again, the top layer there, that multi-factor authentication on there, identity and access management into the environment. But you can see how all these different layers come into protecting your environment. Now, most of you, when you have these conversations with your customers, and I've been there, I was an MSP prior to coming to Sophos, so I've had these conversations myself. When a customer has never had an attack or a breach inside of their environment, that conversation is usually about how cheap can we do cybersecurity, and what's the least amount that I can pay as a customer to be okay protected. Now, after a cybersecurity breach, that's a different story. I've gone in many a time after they've had a breach and they did not take our advice and use all the, the best strategies, the best components in there and locking their employees down. And after that, because it costs them money, when they have downtime, not only does it cost them for you coming in to clean up that environment, they've also got downtime. They're not productive at that point. How many hours, how many days are they losing in productivity for their environment, and what's that cost? So again, that's another way to attack this when you are coming in and talking to those customers is how much does it cost you to be down for a day, a week, a month? How long? If your data is not recoverable in that time, how much data do you lose? Again, not only the time to recover, but how much time does it cost you for your employees sitting around and essentially doing nothing and not making money for that business? So we're going to switch gears, talk a little bit about the managed threat response. So this is a brand new service from Sophos. So this is actually going to be layered on top of the best protection that you can get, our Sophos Intercept X Advanced with EDR, giving you that visibility, and it layers on that MTR, that Managed Threat Response. Again, this is all about bringing in the security experts. We want to make sure that we have someone going in and taking a look at what's happening inside of those environments. So here at Sophos, we have two different flavors when it comes to that managed threat response. So we start with our standard edition. Standard edition is going to have 24/7 lead-driven hunting. Now, what that means is that we have to have something that generates a lead. There has to be an indicator of compromise or something that happens or a threat on your system that was detected in order for the team to actually step in and to start going through and dig into that particular response. Now, I'm not talking just your Intercept X. We also layer on with our tools as well, which are at the OS query level, which are going through and again, looking for those indicators of compromise, looking for those indicators of attack. And if one of those are triggered in the environment, we can then go ahead and jump in and take a look at the environment and start a threat hunt. Those active adversarial detections, again, looking at the different components that are inside of there, a security check, and some activity reporting. So this is all very good from a first step. What we typically recommend and what you'll see, and you can talk to the sales team on this, is going to the advanced offering. It includes all those features from the standard offering, but it also has leadless threat hunting, meaning that we do not have to have some sort of an indicator that there was something wrong in your environment for a threat analyst to go ahead and start a threat hunt. If they found something in another environment, they'll go through and continue that threat hunt through the rest of the environments. They'll do periodic scans to ensure that, hey, we don't have any port scans or anything else going on, or anything else we might detect inside of the network, again, for an indicator of compromise. The other really good component that this brings in is the direct call-in support. This is kind of like your bat phone. Something's going on, we're not quite sure what's happening in the environment. There's been nothing popping up on Sophos or anything else, but we're just getting kind of a weird feeling with how things are operating. Pick up the phone and say, hey, can we look into this environment? And that'll kick off that threat analyst to go in and start doing a deep dive on your environment to see what is happening and if there is in fact a threat, or if it's just a false positive and it's coming from this particular application that may be calling out or doing something that it's not particularly supposed to. This also in here gives us that enhanced telemetry. The enhanced telemetry on here right now is actually extending this beyond just the Sophos endpoint. So with this today, we can actually go in and start to tie into the XG firewall as well. It is just going to be the Sophos endpoint and the XG firewall for today. In the future, we'll start to expand that to third-party software, third-party SIMs, and other things to bring in additional information. This is just starting off slow with just the Sophos products at this point. Also going in, making sure we got that proactive, posture improvement. Again, giving you the ideas and the guidance of, hey, we're seeing this inside of your environment. We recommend that you do X in order to better protect your environment. Again, going through with that asset discovery as well, covering your operating systems, applications, different vulnerabilities from, patch assessment on there. And again, giving you those recommendations of, hey, here's where you're weak as far as security environment. We recommend you shore these up. So another component on here is going to be when we start taking a look at the cloud. Most people, when they see cloud, tend to run the other direction, but again, it is here, it's not going anywhere. A lot of us have customers or even ourselves that are hosting things or having things hosted in the cloud through Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, and we need to have visibility. We've got all these different components and all these different systems running in the environment, and without that visibility, we won't have any idea of our security posture as well as our compliance in the environment as well. And this is where we start to introduce Sophos Cloud Optics. Cloud Optics is designed to give you full visibility, compliance, and security in the cloud, protecting those environments. It's from a single pane inside of the Cloud Optics. You can take a look at your AWS, Azure, and Google Clouds on there. It will also go in and map out your entire environment. Again, visibility is key when it comes to AWS. We have a lot of developers that may be having their hands on inside of that particular environment. And if something gets spun up in that environment and is given access out through the security layers and is now open to particular ports that are now could be compromised, that's a way into your cloud-based system. So that same thing we talked about with the active adversary. The active adversaries know that you have cloud-based systems out there, and they will be checking for ways to compromise and get into those systems as well, because again, they are high-value targets. So when we get into optics, and it really does start with visibility. So the visibility is going to lead to the better security. We're also going to give you additional risk assessments on there as well. But you can see here, this is just a quick topology of your AWS environment. We can see the internet gateway, our VPC, the different containers inside of those. And if we were actually able to dig into any one of those, you can see that here's all the inbound ports and the outbound protocols, IPs, and the security groups that this particular database actually belongs to. Again, we can click into those security groups and actually define what is going on with that particular security group, where does it lead to, and ensure that that is the correct security group for that particular database, ensuring that no one has access to that database that is unauthorized. So when we start talking about that unauthorized in there, and I would definitely highly recommend anyone who is in the cloud environment, reach out to your sales team, get an actual optics demo. If you're doing anything in AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, reach out, do a full actual walkthrough with our public cloud team on there. There are a lot of components on there. There's actually a new feature which we'll be releasing here in a couple of months, which has permission levels on there, and something maybe you didn't even think of. What permission levels do the service accounts need on these particular environments? And it'll actually map it out and show you which service accounts are able to touch which systems and how often. So out of the course of, let's say, the last month, how many times did that service account access these particular systems? And let's say maybe it's a service account with 200 plus permissions on there, and it only went out and was reaching out to 5 particular systems in there to access. Why does it need those other 195 permissions? That's basically way too much. It's over permissioned inside of the environment, and bringing that, again, visibility will help you curb someone compromising that account, which has basically access to everything and goes unchecked. So let's talk a few recommendations in here, and this is just a quick review. Again, 2FA everywhere. If you take nothing away from this, and this goes for your personal as well, you know, your banking sites, getting into any of your personal data. If you're doing a Windows system and you're using the Microsoft login, making sure that you have 2FA on that as well. Again, 2FA everywhere. You know, do this today. Make sure you go through, and if you're doing nothing else on there, make sure this is enabled. We can, you know, greatly reduce your threat standing, or your threat exposure in the environment with 2FA. It's not an end-all be-all, but again, it makes you a harder target. Subject yourselves to the same security audits that you would put on your customers. What this means is most people don't do any security audits, but go find a third-party company that does a security audit and have them audit you as the MSP. Again, you are a target of attack. If your business gets attacked and if there is a successful attack against you, how long do you think you're going to be in business? Paying for that, security audit against your company, having them go and do a proactive attack, making sure that all of the vectors are closed, making sure that all the internal components and procedures that you're working with are secure inside of your environment. Role-based administration, which again goes back to what we were just talking about there, making sure that not everybody is a super admin inside of your network. We don't need to have everybody running around as a chief. Delegate it out to this person has access to these particular customers. That's all he deals with. This person deals with these particular customers here. And inside of those particular customers, he only has access to these sorts of machines or doesn't have access to the firewall. So make sure you utilize role-based administration in all of your programs, to segment out that data that people have access to. This goes without saying, do not expose RDP to the world. If you guys have to have RDP into your networks, again, VPN into your network with a 2FA and then launch into your RDP. We believe here that synchronized security is definitely one of the key components, and this really goes to security in depth, making sure you have a layered defense mechanism on there and ensuring that those layers can share threat intelligence. Employ a SOC team. I would definitely recommend you look at our MTR service if you have not already, but have some sort of a SOC team. If you do not have a dedicated 24/7 SOC team built inside of your MSP practice, you're not an MSSP, definitely offload that responsibility. Have someone come in and start taking a look at that high level security, ensuring that your systems are protected. Definitely put those on yours as well, and your customers, making sure that no one is getting in and dwelling on their networks. Prepare an incident response plan. This is actually going to be pretty critical, and a lot of people do not have these. So by an incident response, meaning develop the scenarios. What do we do if we have an attack inside of our environment? If there's ransomware in our environment, what do we do? Where do we start? What's the first thing that we do, and then start remediating that on through the environment? If it's same plan, if we have a customer that gets attacked, what is the plan going in? make sure you have that incident response plan in place. It'll make lives a lot easier rather than everyone looking at each other and going, what do we do now? Lastly on here, and again, this one is severely important, proper backups. And when I say proper backups, don't just have your backup on your network and there's direct access to that backup. If you can get to it easily, the bad guys can get to it. And remember, that active adversary on there is going to be looking for backups as well. They want to ensure that they can find the backups and they can either delete or encrypt those backups. So ensuring that you have offline, off-site backups that are not exposed to your actual network there are going to be mission critical. If there is an event, if there is a breach on there, again, just like the company I was speaking with last night, they did not have their proper backups. They were all on their local network, on their data stores, and the bad guy was able to find those and encrypt them. All right, guys, with that, if we have any questions, happy to go through and answer those. Anna, team, any questions we need to cover?
Yes, Dima will pick up a couple of questions and we'll answer them.
Okay, so the first question, Steve, will the Sophos Cloud Optics data storage remain only US-based, no regional partitions? Optional data storage will refrain most EU-based businesses from signing up for this service.
So I do not have any additional information on if we're going to have different data centers for cloud optics. Keep in mind, there's no data that is actually stored inside of cloud optics. So there's nothing that's actually going to cause you to not be able to utilize that, even with a data sovereignty or anything like that. But additional data centers will be spun up as there is need. So if there is a lot of need in your environment, reach out to your local sales teams, let them know that, for whatever reason, and you can definitely get the public cloud team on the call as well and determine, all right, here's the need we have around it. Here's why we have to have our data center in the EU and we can't have it US based. As long as there's compelling reasons for there, and as long as we have enough of a need and demand for it, the team will go through and start to spin up additional data centers. So right now, Cloud Optics, it was designed here. It is a fairly new product offering for Sophos. The underlying architecture on there has been around for quite a while, but it is currently US based, and they do have lots of customers from around the globe that are utilizing it. And so far, this has not been a question that has come up and has not been a showstopper.
Okay, the other question, I think it's a good one. Is MTR for us as MSP or for our clients? And
so both, yeah. Absolutely. So remember, you as the MSP are a target. That attacker, that same screen that we had up there, that attacker gets in and compromises, one of your employees and gets into your system, and they're now having that dwell time in your environment. That's your environment that we need to be looking at for those indicators of compromise and indicators of attack. Not only your customers, but yes, absolutely, it should start with you as the MSP as well. With us here, we give away NFRs for all of our products. MTR does have a cost because there is, people behind it. But that whole concept, whatever you want to call it, our team tends to call it eat your own dog food. Make sure that whatever products you are selling to your customers, you're utilizing yourself as well. If this is the best product to protect your customer, why wouldn't you be using it as well?
Great. I don't think we have any other question outside of these. There is a question: what solutions are limited to requiring an XG firewall? I'm not sure of the question, to be honest, but
yeah, I'm not sure of that one. What solutions are required? So XG firewall, and whoever put that in there, if you want to clear that up, we'd be happy to answer it. But the XG firewall is a standalone firewall appliance from Sophos. It's your network protection, your web and application protection on there, the Sophos sandboxing with Sandstorm. So it's that border protection of there. Now, when we start looking at endpoint and everything else, Those all have a walkie-talkie with that synchronized security heartbeat to where they can share threat intelligence. So the whole goal is better together. The endpoint and the firewall work better when they're both in the same environment. They can actually share information from the endpoint to the firewall, from the firewall to the endpoint, giving you increased visibility into what's going on. They both work independently and by themselves as well. So if you just had an XG firewall, it's still an XG firewall. It still has the best protection on there from a perimeter standpoint.
Yeah. All right. So there is someone who said not a question, but thanks for a brilliant webinar. So that's good. Thank you very much, Steve.
Hey, you're welcome.
All right. So I don't see any other questions. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. And we will be sending the recording and after the session.
Yes, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Dima, and thank you also to our participants. And if you come up with any other question after the session, please write an email to us, call us, and we'll be more than happy to help you. As Dima mentioned already, we have recorded the session, and you will receive the recording and the follow-up slides tomorrow morning. And just a quick note from my side, you probably know that we are running our monthly enablement and update sessions on every third Thursday of the month at 2 p.m. This session was an exception since this was a special edition with Steve, and in February we come back to the regular schedule actually, and next session will take place on the 20th of February at 2 p.m. Central European Time. So please join us. We'll still have lots of interesting and useful material to share with you and lots of updates. With this, thank you all and hope to welcome you on the 20th of February. Goodbye.